Welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable. This is the PartsEdge panel with a team of leaders, including Kaylee Felio, the sales and marketing manager of PartsEdge, NADA speaker later this week. Kaylee, congratulations and welcome back to the Roundtable.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited for our discussion.
Yes, you got a great panel here. I see John Fairchild, also an NADA speaker. Mike Weldon is here from the Hansel Automotive Group, and our good friend Ed Roberts from Bozard Ford Lincoln. So, Kaylee, I know you got a lot going on for this panel, so I'm going to step out of the way and let you get things started.
Yeah. Okay. So I really want to talk about just the world of parts management, how the role of a parts manager is evolving, and just what they face day to day. And so I know you guys are all in the trenches of everything. So I want to talk about, what you guys, I want to start with just defining what a reactive and what proactive means, because we talk about that a lot, but can we define what that means to you? So I want to go around the room and just, and John, you go first. What does reactive mean and what does proactive mean in a parts management role?
I appreciate that. And just a little tiny bit of background on me. I started in the car business around age 15. And by the time I was 17, I was a parts guy. And I spent about 18 years in parts, Ford and Chrysler, worked my way up to a parts manager. And, when I first entered the parts department, we didn't even have computers. That's kind of telling on my my ancient background. But we had card bins and everything like that. And, I think having transitioned from parts into service and being interfacing directly with customer has really opened my eyes at that point to being proactive, because, previous to that, I had a feeling of, hey, if it's on back order, it's on back order. There's nothing we can do about it. And I know Ed Roberts has heard the expression D99, which means like an eternal back order from Ford. And what I feel like has happened recently, particularly since COVID and supply chain interruption, is as parts people, in some cases, we've gotten numb to the fact that stuff is on back order. And what I feel like it happens is equivalent to a service advisor hearing a customer say no, and they quit asking. And with a parts person, the way that parallels is if I've got a back order situation, if I got certainly in a car down situation, I need to go through the motions and see if I can find that part elsewhere. I may have it in my mind that it's not available and I can't get it, but sometimes you surprise yourself. And if you pick up the phone, you get on your parts locator system, whatever it takes to find that part. Sometimes we can procure it locally from an aftermarket source. Oh no, I said it. Aftermarket. Yeah, we don't want to do that in a warranty situation. But I guarantee you, if I give the customer the option, a lot of times they'll opt for that white box part just to get their car out of that. So proactivity to me means searching for that part a little bit more than what we may comfortably think is going to be the end result, because in that 1 out of 10 times, we'll surprise ourselves. It's worth it. It's worth it to the customer.
It is worth it. How do we get the parts people to, motivate them to do that? Because I feel like a lot of times they don't.
I feel like it's a cadence of accountability in any case from the upper management. And if we've got a parts and service director in a situation, I think that's the best case scenario, because there's got to be one overarching entity, or there should be one overarching enemy, but against both departments, or else sometimes you get some clash there between parts and service. That happened to me. I got promoted from parts to parts and service director, and what an eye-opening experience again. But you got to have a cadence of accountability. You can't just take for granted that the parts department is digging deep. As the service manager, as the parts and service director, I got to be the one making sure that we're following up on that every day.
Absolutely. So, and Mike, do you have anything to add on, the reactive and proactive mindsets?
Well, I think John kind of hit it on the head. I tell you, I looked at it differently a bit. I finally decided that I had to get into the trenches and get everybody in there with me, and then dissolve parts and service, period. We don't have parts and service. We have fixed. And what are we going to do together to accomplish the objectives that we've established, that we know that we can hit or exceed, and how are we going to get there? And I tell you, that has opened up a lot of dialogue that we never had in the past. It says, you stay on your side and I'll stay on my side. There you go. It's what you got to do. And it's hard. It's a hard transition, but it does work.
No, that guy.
Yeah, no, I could see how that could work, because you can't just, like John's example, you can't just put a parts person in service. You can't do that to every single person. You have to, just dissolve it and make it one. Ed, do you have anything to add before we move on to my next question?
Well, it's got to touch on a few things, but I'll add a couple. There is things that, ultimately we react to a lot of things in life, but if we create a plan, things go so much smoother. And one of the things that I tell people, in the absence of a process, reaction takes place, and we react a lot. But look at the season we're in. The temperature outside is cold. It's winter. And what happens in wintertime? You have more batteries fail. If you didn't increase your battery inventory, you're not planning. It's so, and when a new recall comes out, or you see they're becoming a trend with a certain issue, that's when it's time to start ramping those things up. So it's paying attention to the details and reacting accordingly. But that's still reacting, because that's reacting accordingly. But it's paying attention, and the paying attention is the proactive piece. And then there is things that change with seasonality. We're going to do different work in different seasons and plan for that. Don't carry the same inventory 12 months out of the year if things are going to shift with certain items around seasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point, because there's different, areas, different markets, we just all need to kind of carry a little bit of a different inventory based on the season and what we're in. Now I want to switch over to talk about efficiency, because I think we're in this always happens the end of the year, beginning of the year. And I think it's happening even more right now with just cutting things. And there's kind of this, I don't want to call it a scare, like everyone's scared, but I want to talk about just where there is profit in being more efficient and focusing on that. Yeah. So I don't know who wants to go first, but just let's dive into what is efficiency in the parts department. How can we be more efficient with our inventories?
I'll go first. And please certainly jump in next time, you guys, if you want to, because I'm kind of a microphone hog. Can be. Okay. It's not intentional. It's just
I'm right behind you, so go ahead.
It's just me. That's why I jumped in before Ed was like, because I know Ed. Two things come to mind, Kaylee, is about efficiency that I see every day that need attention. So if you're a parts manager, if you're a parts and service director, take a couple notes on this and take a good, hard, introspective look at what's going on in your department. And here's the two things: is number one, off the shelf fill rate. Okay, so there's two basic things. Same day fill rate, which is great, but at the root of it is off the shelf fill rate. So if you register that, if it's a stock status part, that means we should stock it, right? If it's met our criteria to be phased into inventory and it's a stock status part, 100% of the time, guys, we should have that part, 100%, not 97, not 95. Okay. But where are we now? And we need to be careful about setting a goal that's so tremendously out of the scope of anything we've ever performed that it seems impossible to our team members. But we've got to benchmark and trend our off the shelf fill rate so we can see over time, what's our trend? Are we getting better? Are we getting worse? Are we about the same? Most manufacturers, most scenarios are going to say that you need a 95% or more off the shelf fill rate. And again, that's your stock status part. You should have it in stock. Number two, if I've got a non-stock status part, guys, what does that mean? It means it should have never been in my inventory to begin with. What am I talking about? Really, I'm talking about special order parts. And you know, in your heart of hearts, if you're watching me now and taking a note, special order parts, that you got a problem there, buddy. You got a problem with special. Yes, I'm talking to you with special order parts. More than likely, you do. Go back and look at your inventory. You got shelves and shelves full of special order parts. And particularly with what we were talking about earlier about being proactive, and sometimes we get proactive and we get the thing handled, but then nobody takes it off of the special order list. And I get another special order part. Guess what? It's sitting there in the special order pile or shelf and with Mr. Smith's name on it, but he's already been handled. So 2 areas I would focus on, Kaylee, right away. I see this every day in a lot of scenarios. Well-run departments, not so well-run departments, is off-the-shelf fill rate. And what's my age and what's my latency on special order parts? And again, if it's a non-stock status part, it's dead after 30 days. It should have never been there to begin with. So that's obsolete. That's obsolescence in your inventory. So there's my rant.
Well, and that, contributes to being more efficient, right? Looking at all of those areas to be proactive and more efficient with the way that we're stocking parts. I think special orders is probably the toughest thing for parts managers to control, because you kind of have to have a little bit of them, like a little bit. I don't know. You can't just not have special orders, but
no. And certainly if it's a warranty thing, you got to, you're obligated to do that. Obviously we want to get customers to pay upfront for retail, but I still see a lot of departments that don't execute that. They say that, but they'll go ahead and order for their buddy, their friend, the boss's buddy. The boss, knows the boss is one of those categories that gets over. Oh, I better order this because they know the boss. And if I don't, I'm in trouble. They know Ed Roberts, which everybody does, guys. You still got to go through the process. So I see people breaking their own process about special orders all day, every day.
That makes sense. Yeah. Have a process for special orders. I feel like
Right,
Ed wants to add something.
Yes, I'll chime in there, and you guys touched on it or highlighted it more when you chimed in there, Kaylee. It's process for SOP. We know there was demand there. We didn't keep that demand alive, and now it becomes obsolescence. But also, I want to talk about 2 other things. Lean is clean, and we have to operate our parts department lean because we need to make sure our dollars are invested in the right inventory, not inventory that we're emotionally connected to. And let's go back to the saying that the numbers don't lie, people do. And what I mean by that is I'm not saying that we're lying to each other, we're lying to ourselves. Every time we change or override the phase in and phase out because the computer sees the demand, then we're lying to ourselves that we think we know our inventory better. We're hanging on to something because we know that we can sell it, and we probably can, but it might be 18 months from now. If you reinvested that same $1,800 into something else, how much growth can you make of that same $1,800 over those 18 months? So do not fool yourselves. Use the data.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I just want to
lose my thought.
Use the data to help you. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it did help me because I feel like what we run into is parts managers don't trust the system, the DMS. And how do we get them to trust the system? How do we know what's the right phase-in criteria is for certain types of parts? Because I think what's happening is they get grouped into too little of sources. That's really the core of how you can control and be more efficient with what you're stocking, because a phase-in criteria for one part isn't going to work for the next part. So I think I answered my own question, but I want to sense what you guys are feeling too.
I think another thing you've got to look at that we didn't mention here is lost sales.
Oh yes.
You've got to look at that first before you start stocking it on the shelf. We can sell the part tomorrow, but I can't sell labor that I lost today tomorrow. And if you educate everybody to where they're working collectively together, you take everything that's been said here. Don't rely on the system. You have to double check the system. You have to educate your staff to understand the system. And then to Ed's point, you do run lean, but if you run lean and efficient, you're going to accomplish both objectives. The way I look at it, I'm going to sell the hours and I'm going to sell parts, because labor sells the parts. And this is true. And you can look at it the same way with your wholesale customers, because it's the same thing. They're trying to sell hours and they need parts. So if you collectively set your system up to where you're not reactionary, and that's where you get your reputation. Hey, I can call the guy down the street. I know he's got it. He's always got it. And you get that reputation, and you're not going to have obsolescence.
Now,
and I don't fall in love with parts.
Exactly. But how do you, so let's say like we're talking to parts managers and they feel like they have a really good inventory and they're doing really good, but some of these things are happening. How do we, I don't know what the right word is, like, how do we get them to see that there might be a way to be more efficient, even though you might be producing a really good inventory or might be able to service your customers? If you're running into these things, how can you be more efficient, I guess is my question, I think.
I think, in the parts department particularly, I see it more and more in service and well-run departments. It's really about constant communication. I go back to accountability, and my favorite expression, a cadence of accountability or a rhythm of accountability. And if we're not having regular huddle meetings with our parts people and going over these things, and, one of my favorite techniques to have a huddle with our team members is to use something I call a compliment sandwich. And basically what that does with your team members is it can't be all doom and gloom. You can't just beat them over the head. Okay. It used to be the favored management technique when I was a kid and when I was coming up. You can't just be a straight up drill sergeant. People want to know what they're doing right. Want to encourage them. And then I want to give them some news that may be painful to hear, but necessary. And then I want to go back with something positive so that I can uplift everybody. But really, it's about a cadence and a rhythm of accountability. And if, as parts managers, if you're not identifying what your key performance indicators are and trending those key performance indicators on a scoreboard, and then using that scoreboard to facilitate a huddle in which we have that ongoing accountability, because we all know that execution is the key. If we all know what to do, then why aren't we doing it? But motivation really is one thing that's kind of a tricky thing. I personally don't believe that you can really motivate people per se, but what we got to do is not demotivate them. So put obstacles and barriers in their way that can't allow them to accomplish what we want them to accomplish. But to answer your question, really, it's all about having, I feel like one of the biggest elements is having a cadence of accountability through group communication and regular meetings. I'm not talking about a meeting that goes on and on and on forever, but that has the main points that you need to talk about, and getting the feedback and getting the action of what your team members are going to do, rather than putting the words in their mouth, asking questions and letting them tell you what they need or what their action plans are, and then coaching them from that point forward.
Sorry, I had to mute. No, that's spot on. Ed, did you want to add something?
I do.
Okay.
Parts departments are, and it doesn't matter who's in there, most of them are so resistant to change. They feel like we've always done it this way. I don't need to change. Well, let's look at it. Let's turn that. John's talking about cadence of accountability. Let's turn that back around on us a bit. Let's turn that back around on fixed ops directors, service directors, general managers, whatever it may be. We're expecting inventory managers, and that's what these guys are, to be sales reps and to be sales managers. And they're not. We have to guide them down those paths. Apple didn't make all the changes they needed to make by hanging on to the Macintosh or the iPod, or they had to continuously reinvent themselves, and they didn't do it with the same person. If you go, there's two Steves. But one Steve brought it to life. The other Steve brought the idea. Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. Look at the ones that don't reinvent themselves. When's the last time anybody on this call has been to Circuit City or Blockbuster? And then look at the ones that's been resistant to change, and they still have a little bit of a lifeline, but they're not doing anything. When did you ever buy something from JCPenney's online? We didn't, and now they're circling the drain. Kmart, Macy's, they resisted the change, and sometimes they're not going to see that light themselves. It's up to us to help them and guide them to see that light, because they are not who they're not. They're not salespeople. And if they're not salespeople, then we have to help them see what allows us to be better salespeople.
That makes sense. Well, and that kind of leads me to just like, how do you guys envision the future role of a parts manager? Because now we're going into online sales, mobile service. We're still in wholesale. What other departments am I missing within the parts department? There's so many ways. So yeah, I want to go around the room and just, describe how you guys envision the future of a parts manager.
Well, that I'm going to say that turns back around to what you're doing there, Kaylee, because parts department's been the least ones that use the technology the least, and what they did use of the technology, they overrode it. And anytime that we can bring resources to them to help them and understand the value of it, it makes their job easier. And once we make their job easier and show them that we're not trying to wean their job out or replace them, then it's the use of technology. And when they start embracing technology, once you embrace it, you move forward with it. And if we move forward with technology, the tools are there. We're just not using them effectively.
And I think the next step that you have to take is you have to get them out of their environment into the real world, so that they understand the benefit of cohabitating with others. Because to Ed's point, they do like solitude, and leave me alone. I'll do my job. And I will tell you, it's been kind of fun transitioning the way that they think and say, wow, if I'm part of this, I've got to get involved in this. And then they start offering up ideas that helps everybody grow. It's just a mindset. John said you got to encourage them. You got to explain to them about the roadblocks that they have and how to overcome them. And I think goes back to one thing that we talk about even with our customers: communication. Over communicating internally will drive the process forward. And you got to break down those silos. And there's been silos that's been there for years. And I'm going to ramble a little bit. John rambled earlier. But when I first got in the business, and I was with Ford for over 30 years, at the first store that I entered into, and they said, "Oh, you're going to hate the parts manager. You guy's a jerk. He doesn't help." I said, and I wrote a note to myself: first step, figure out the parts manager, because that was going to be the key to my success. So I went in there and made him my best friend. And then I went and learned how his business worked. And then I showed him what I wanted to accomplish. And I got him involved in what I wanted to do. And I tell you, we tore it up, and no one got in our way.
I want to chime in there one more time there, John, because I'm going to set the stage for you. John said that he moved from the parts department to the fixed ops director. And he did not do that by doing what a normal parts person does. The normal parts person is the most tenured and the least trained. And John would not have moved into that role without training himself. And he did that to the level of, what are you doing now, John? We train others.
I train others. I'm a consultant, coach, and trainer last 15 years.
So we have to make sure that we're providing a platform to train those. John, it's all yours.
And I appreciate it, Ed. And you took the words right out of my mouth about tenure. The parts manager, you go into any environment, every store I go into, I can almost bank on that the parts manager is the most tenured person there. They've been there the longest. They've been through 4 owners and 17 general managers and 13 service managers. They've seen it all. Okay. And that does, in certain instances, create someone that's got a little bit of a cynical mindset, perhaps, in those situations, because they feel like, oh, this fad is going to pass in a lot of cases. Okay. And we all know it. And I've seen them, and I've been one before. And it's a compliment. Just like to say a vacuum that really sucks is a good vacuum, right? It's a compliment to say to a parts guy that they're a great order taker. Okay. Cause that's what they are. All right. They're inventory managers and they take your order. If they take a great order and deliver that, then that's the epitome of their job. But I think that going forward, to answer your question, Kaylee, is that we got to focus our parts managers on being production leaders. I see some good ideas that are floating around about how to do that. And in many cases, it's about working your pay plan. And what is that pay plan of the parts manager? Is it focused on production? And for example, Ed, you guys may do this, is the parts manager is often paid on the productivity of the service department. All right. And like Mike mentioned, the more silos we got, the less that we're together as a team operating as one unit for the sake of the customer. If we get the customer taken care of, guess what? All of our goals and objectives get taken care of too. So going forward, I think you guys can appreciate that a parts manager is really going to need to be focused as being a production leader.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Production leader is exactly, yeah, that, I mean, it's the position is definitely evolving. And it's a really cool thing to see, being that I've been in it for 10 years and I've just seen how much it's changed, and the mindsets. It's really exciting. I'm excited for what's to come this year and what's to continue. Because, with Ed, with what you guys are doing with mobile service, I think that's a huge opportunity. There's some opportunities with online sales. There's so much opportunity. You just have to figure out what's going to work for your market and your customers. Really, you're meeting them where they want to be.
Absolutely. And Ted's joining in there, but since COVID, the light has been shined on fixed ops. We've had little pockets where we had a little recession and we focus on fixed ops, but COVID hit. Nobody came in and bought cars. Then we had the chip shortage. They couldn't build cars. And guess what? Dealers had to survive with fixed ops. And the weakest part, or not the weakest part, the area with the most opportunity is to make our shop more efficient. And the way we make our shop more efficient is have a more efficient parts department. So the last couple of years has really shined the light on parts managers. And that's what's allowed us to be able to go out and have these conversations and talk about the technology that can help them. Think about Zoom. Zoom was there before COVID, but we all embraced it during COVID. The technology is already there. We just hadn't embraced it yet.
Yeah, and you got to love change. Change is inevitable, but if you embrace it, I got to tell you, there's nothing that's going to hold you back.
Very refreshing. Wow. Great panel. Kaylee, a lot came out here, and we learned a lot about everybody on the panel. John Fairchild, great. We have to get you some captions. This way we don't have to, hold up all the signs. So there we go. So, Kaylee, you're headed to NADA later in the week.
Yeah.
Congratulations again. I mentioned that you are speaking. What are you going to be talking about at NADA? What's the topic this time out?
The title is what is the title? Purposeful inventory management. Oh, the potential with purposeful inventory management. So kind of what we're talking about here. So I'm really excited to deliver and just provide more insight to what parts managers are, dealing with. Because I get a lot of feedback from, dealers and GMs that they don't really know what's going on in their parts departments. So I'm excited.
Everybody, if you're traveling to Las Vegas this week, be sure to see Kaylee's sessions at NADA. They'll be exciting, and she has brought the spark to parts. Okay, and parts is hot. Okay, John Fairchild is speaking also with our good friend Sir Sean Kingery as well. So be sure to see John Fairchild at the NADA show as well. Ed Roberts, thank you for all you do for the industry, and Mike Weldon, as always, amazing stuff. So, Kaylee, thank you. And thanks for putting all this together.
Thank you.
Everybody, Kaylee Felio with the PartsEdge panel here today at the Fixed Ops Roundtable.